mining summit, this forum this evening in the Queen City of Virginia. And there's so many elected officials that are in the audience, and I don't want to, for fear of not recognizing somebody, I want to thank all the elected officials, both at the township level, the city level, the county level, and the state level. We all agree mining is our past, our present, and our future, and our future is bright. Our future is bright. Mining is a path to a brighter future, and I have an opening statement. You're going to be able to meet my colleagues from across this great nation, and I'm so excited. Today was a great day, and tonight's event is going to be great as well. I can't tell you how impressed I am with the questions that my colleagues have asked when we were at the mine tour. We saw the mine blast. We talked to miners, community members, and members of the labor community that are really, really passionate about mining, as all of you are sitting in these seats. I can't thank you enough. So I've got an opening statement, and then our Western Caucus Chair, Congressman Noyes from Washington, will have a statement, and then we'll start the panel. So, good evening, and thank you very much for coming to the Mining Summit, hosted by my office and the Congressional Western Caucus. The purpose of these two panels today is to highlight to my friends and colleagues what mining in Minnesota has to offer. I look forward to exploring both the here and the now, along with the very bright future of mining in northern Minnesota. I'd like to start by thanking my colleagues from Alabama, Arkansas, the state of Washington, California, Wisconsin, and of course from western Minnesota. I'm truly blessed to have allies like these in DC. Now let's recognize our first panel. We have an exciting group of local mining companies, including Chrissy Bartovich of U.S. Steel, John Cherry of Polymet, Dean DeBelt of Twin Metals, Jessica Johnson of Talon Metals, Colin Jodry of Tech, and Harry Noyes of Encampment. Northern Minnesota has been mining for over 130 years. We have a strong mining tradition supported by a world-class workforce and community. As Chrissy can attest to today, mining iron up here built America and defended her during 2 world wars. There's no infrastructure nor modern society without the contributions of companies like U.S. Steel. In Minnesota, every single ton of ore mined means more funding for every single school in Minnesota and other economic development projects in our region. And it is no accident that our great cities, schools, and communities are built along the veins of iron snaking its way through the Northland. And therefore, I look forward to Chrissy sharing U.S. Steel's story, discussing some of the challenges they have upcoming and how we, as members of Congress, can support the iron industry. I also look forward to highlighting other future mining projects and the exciting prospects they offer. As we know too well, our country is moving in the wrong direction on import reliance. According to the United States Geological Survey, we are more import reliant on the metals we need now than we were last year, and that is only projected to get worse. And that's why northern Minnesota will continue to lead, just like we lead with iron mining. We will lead with critical minerals development. Every single company on this stage has an exciting project, whether it be on the federal, state, or private land. Every single company on the stage is looking to hire northern Minnesotans and develop the ore needed for energy that keeps the lights on and our homes heated, technology that we use to connect our everyday lives, national defense to keep our country safe, and so much more. So next, I'd like to welcome our second panel, and I'm just going to introduce them, and they'll come up afterwards. Our second panel, these folks are invaluable leaders in resources in Washington, D.C. and across the nation in mining policy. First, we have the current chair of the Center for American Freedom at the American First Policy Institute and President Trump's Interior Secretary, the Honorable David Bernhardt. Mr. Bernhardt is a native of Wrightville, Colorado, and has a distinguished career in public policy. He is a defender of our mining way of life. For 2 years, Mr. Bernhardt served as Secretary of the Interior and was instrumental in leading the nation away from import dependency and to a mining future where American workers developed our resources. Before joining Trump's Interior Department, Mr. Bernhardt worked in Washington in several capacities, including on Capitol Hill for key committees and in the Bush administration. He has been an invaluable resource to our office, drawing on decades of experience in policymaking in the natural resources space. We also have Mark Compton of the American Exploration and Mining Association. AEMA is a 125-year-old organization across 44 states, representing every single sector in the mining industry. Mark and AEMA are well-versed in America's mining landscape, headquartered out west in Washington state. They provide a boots-on-the-ground perspective from folks in the industry. Mark previously worked as the executive director of the Utah Mining Association, and for Idaho Governor Butch Otter, he has taken his experience and leadership in that role to the national stage. He lives in northern Idaho, another area rich in mineral resources. Rounding out our panel, our second panel, is Mr. Ryan Jackson, who leads the National Mining Association's public policy. NMA is officed in Washington, D.C., weighing in on bills, amendments, rulemakings, agency decisions, and so much more firsthand. Ryan also has a distinguished career in the natural resources public policy sector. Before this, he worked for President Trump's Environmental Protection Agency and was instrumental in the president's water policy. Ryan worked for years as a key staff member for the Senate Environment Committee and for Senator Jim Inhofe. Between these three leaders, this panel is second to none for mining issues. All of these individuals have been tireless allies, providing our offices in Congress with the facts and resources needed to ensure we develop policy that allows for the responsible development of our natural resources. And as the top Republican on energy and minerals resources, I am bringing our northern Minnesota miners' voice to the conversation in Congress. Minnesota, and our mining sector in particular, takes a backseat to no one. So for this next 45-minute discussion, let's talk about policies that will support our mining sector. And because Republicans are not in the majority, I want to highlight policies we need to push back on, because it's just as important to stop bad legislation as it is to pass good legislation. Now for quick housekeeping, I want to turn to Chairman Newhouse for his opening statement, and then after Mr. Newhouse, we will begin with Ms. Bardovich for her opener and move alphabetically down the line. Members will then ask questions in a hearing style. Once everyone has asked their question, we'll take a 5-minute recess so our second panel can come up and take their seats at the table. Panel 2 will then give their opening statement in alphabetical order, and we will then proceed to members' questions. So, before we begin, Chrissy, Mr. Newhouse, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Pete. Thank you very much. Thanks for hosting our meeting here. It's been very enjoyable so far. I got to tell you, you guys probably already know this about Pete Stauber. You couldn't have a better spokesperson at all in Washington, D.C. on these issues. You can't talk to Pete about hockey, pork chops, anything, without mining coming up in the conversation. Jerry Carl pointed that out to me, and it is absolutely true. He's a one-track person when it comes. He's so passionate about this issue, and that I just got to compliment you.
Thank you.
And thank you for inviting us up here. We've had a great day so far. We were able to go to I've never been to a library that has drill cores in it. I didn't know such a thing existed. But my gosh, it just blew us away. The resource that you have, and you've been able to track, map, everything that you have in this state. It's just amazing. We went out to the Mintech mine to see firsthand. Many of us, I would guess, would never have had an opportunity to come to a mine like that if it weren't for this trip. And so I think that was very important as well. And then I got to say thanks to the Iron Trails Motor Events Center. I understand this is just months old. What a beautiful facility. And I think there's some hockey going on right now. I don't know why you're all here. This is an awesome place, and thanks for hosting us here. So why are we here? Like I said, we're all from different states. Why would we care what happens in this cold, godforsaken place?
Hey, watch it.
That has great beer, which is good. But I tell you, it's important for us to see firsthand what's going on. Pete tells us every single day the challenges that you're having here in some activity that is critical for our country. It really is. To be able to have the resources necessary for not only our economy to grow, but strategically. Just think what would happen if we let what you have here, that I hope you do not take for granted, but if we let what you have here go away, where would we be as a country? We would be at the mercy of other countries for these kinds of materials. And if we want to, let alone national security, but if we want to see a carbon-free future, how are we going to do that if we're going to be dependent on China or the Congo or countries in South America? Some of these places, as you well know, are not necessarily our best friends either, and would not have our best interests at heart. So I think it's really key that we're here so that we can speak from the heart just as passionately as Pete does, because we will have seen with our own eyes and talk to personally to the people who these things impact on a daily basis. So that's why we're here. We're here to listen, to learn. You guys know the importance, the significance better than we do, and that's why we're here with open ears. I've been telling my colleagues that we really should, well, first of all, we should get all 435 members of Congress here to see firsthand. I think that would make a lot of our problems go away. But we really should organize a tour, a trip to some of the mineral activities and mining activities we have, if we could get to them, in the countries of China or the Congo or some of those other places that I never thought I would say this. Thank God we have an EPA in this country, right, Brian? Because other countries don't care about their environment. Do we want to be a party to that? Do we want to be a party to the kinds of labor standards that they have in other countries? And then again, do we want to be dependent on countries that are not necessarily our best friends? There's just so many reasons why developing the resources that God gave us right here in the United States of America is important. And so thank you for coming. Thanks for braving the roads out there. Is this what you call a blizzard in Minnesota?
No.
It's pretty cool. No, it's not even close.
Just another Thursday.
Just another Thursday. Well, thank you very much for having us. And just so you know, our job as members of the Western Caucus, just like your representative in Congress, is to amplify your voice in Washington, D.C. That's what we come here to do. So my colleagues here, I couldn't be prouder of them for being here to help do that, because these are really important issues. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to the panel discussions. Mr. Stauber, again, thank you for hosting.
Thank you, Chair Newhouse. So with that, we'll get right to it. Chrissy Bartovich.
Thanks. Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Technical difficulties to start. Good evening. My name is Chrissy Bartovich. I'm the Environmental Director for U.S. Steel's mining facilities, Mid-Tac and Key-Tac. I'm a lifelong resident of northeastern Minnesota, and I am a 22-year employee of U.S. Steel. I'm blessed to live in this area with my husband and be raising our 3 kids, and we will be back here later tonight for hockey practice. Thank you to the Western Caucus for coming to our area to see firsthand what we do, and to Congressman Stauber for arranging the trip. I think it's really important to see this firsthand. Our mining process is relatively simple. We have our over 1,800 employees work to blast the material, crush the rocks, and then magnetically separate iron to ultimately produce approximately 22 million tons of pellets per year. These pellets are then used to make the steel that keeps our nation secure, sustains our domestic manufacturing, including automobiles and appliances, constructs new buildings, safely preserves our food, and harnesses American energy. U.S. Steel is proud that our products are 100% mined, melted, and made in the U.S. I'd also like to welcome you to the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. If you get a chance, please take a walk through the U.S. Steel lobby and check out the arena. I mentioned the shameless plug of the lobby sponsorship because I'm very proud of the support that we as a company provide to this area. In return, the community provides support to our facilities. It's a true partnership, one of many that we need as manufacturing facilities in the U.S. in order to be successful. As a company, we face many challenges to compete in a global market. Safety, environmental, and sustainability are all priorities. This is the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act in 2022. While that's an amazing accomplishment, the rules no longer recognize the world that we live in today. We have aggressive greenhouse gas goals that have been set. In 2021, U.S. Steel is the first American-based steel company to set a net zero emissions goal by 2050. Established and new partnerships are how we will continue to thrive as a company, both from a product and a climate perspective. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very much. John.
Congressman Stauber and other representatives, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come out and see northern Minnesota. A special thank you to Congressman Stauber for all of the help and support, and the phone calls, and the many meetings that we've had. Pete's been a warrior for our cause here, and we wouldn't be where we are without him, so thank you. My name is John Cherry. I'm the president and CEO of Polymet Mining. Been with the company here for about 10 years. I'm actually an environmental engineer by training, and I've been designing, permitting, and building mines in the U.S. for the last 30 years. And it's a never-ending battle. And these metals that we use every single day, if you like indoor plumbing and electricity, you know, like these metals that come out of the ground, and they have to come from somewhere. And a lot of people put out that false dichotomy that you have to choose between the environment and jobs and these metals, and that's not true. We can actually have all of them. There are mines out there. One of the last mines that I did, the Eagle Mine over in Michigan, from the time it operated, or put a shovel in the ground, and through today, it hasn't had a single environmental violation. So mining can be done right. People don't understand the high technology and the tools that are available to do things right. Most people think of miners as the old guy with the prospector, the donkey, the pickaxe. That's not what it's like today. It's a high-tech industry. A little bit about our project. So we're the first project in the Duluth complex, which you probably heard a little bit about. It's the largest undeveloped copper, nickel, precious metal resource in the world. And we're very proud to be the first mine that has received all of our permits to build a mine, a 32,000 ton per day mine. And as you probably know, and has been my experience, the last and final phase of permitting is litigation. So we received our permits at different stages, but basically about 4 or 5 years ago. As soon as we got those permits, there were 22 different lawsuits that were filed. We got that down to 11, and now we are down to the last 3 or 4 pieces of litigation. Again, very proud to say that we're very patient. We put a lot of time and effort into doing it right from the beginning. And every single one of those decisions has gotten to a final decision, including 2 from the Minnesota Supreme Court, has all been in favor of Polymet. So I think we're on the doorstep of opening up the next 100 years of mining here in Minnesota. Just a couple statistics, something to think about as we think about what can we do legislatively possibly. I've been here for 10 years, and our company spent about $450 million to get the permits to have the privilege of spending over $1 billion before we ever make a return on that investment. It shouldn't have to be that way. And when we talk here in a little bit about some ideas, I've got some ideas that we might be able to look at to maybe help that. What businesses need more than anything is certainty. The goalposts can't move and games can't be played. We're happy to meet the rules. Let's just have a fair playing field, and let's not move the goalposts there. Our particular project, there was an economic development study that was done on that by the University of Minnesota Duluth several years ago. Every single year that our project is in operation, they estimated that we generate $550 million of economic impact to St. Louis County. That's the economic equivalent of a Super Bowl coming to town every year for 20 years of our mine life. So it's a big deal. And what we'll mine, we're going to mine copper, nickel, platinum, palladium, gold, silver, and some cobalt. All of those things go into batteries that you need for these electric vehicles. Every wind turbine that you see spinning out there has 10,000 pounds of copper in it. That has to come from somewhere. You can't recycle your way to a renewable economy. Just to maybe put that in a little bit more relatable terms, the resource that we have at Polynet, we have enough metal in the ground to make the equivalent of 7 million Teslas. And we're just one project in the Duluth complex. That's how much metal is sitting out there in the ground. And like I said, we're very excited to be the first ones to have our permits. I think we're on the doorstep of opening that up and having another 100 years of mining up here on the range. And just one last point, I want to thank everyone in this audience. We wouldn't be here where we are today without the support. I recognize many faces, people have written letters, shown up at public hearings, and it takes all of us. It's a battle that we all have to engage in if we want to sustain this way of life. So thank you.
Hey, John, real simple question. How many years of permitting has Polynet been involved thus far?
It depends where you want to start counting, but somewhere between 10 and 17.
Thank you, John. Dean.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Chair, members of the Western Caucus, thank you for the opportunity, the support, and really for taking the time today to learn more about the mining industry and the potential of our copper-nickel opportunities which are in front of us. My name is Dean Belson, the Director of Operations and Safety for Twin Metals, Minnesota. I'm a fourth-generation miner, a fourth-generation Eliite, a promoter and lifelong user of the BWCA, and I'm a proud ranger. Twin Metals, Minnesota is made up of Minnesotans who live, work, and raise families in our area. We're poised to be a modern underground copper, nickel, cobalt, and platinum group metals mine. We're located near Ely and Babbitt, and we and our predecessor companies have held our leases in good standing for 50 years or more. As we talk today, the Duluth complex, as you know, hosts 95% of our nation's nickel, 88% of our nation's cobalt, about 75% of our nation's platinum group metals, and a third of our copper resources. To date, Twin Metals has had a private investment of $530 million in exploration, engineering, and environmental studies. We've drilled over 2 million feet to understand our geologic resource, of which you saw that drill core library today that hosts the state drill core. We have about 500,000 feet in that facility. We have 1.5 million feet in our own state-of-the-art facility at our facility up in Ely. Twin Metals is committed to be a model for future mining in our region by providing long-term family-sustaining jobs, being a supporter of our communities and youth in our areas. We'll provide important contributions to the Public School Trust Fund, and we're committed to environmentally responsible development in our area. About the environmental review process, Twin Metals has spent decades dedicated to studies, environmental studies, to put forward the correct operation for our siting, allowing us to submit our mine plan of operations, which was smaller, more sustainable, and a more efficient plan than we initially set out with. This plan was designed with built-in proven environmental safeguards. One, our underground deposit, the nature of that, 80% of our mining happens 1,500 feet below ground. We know where our target minerals are, and because of that, no waste material at our mine will be brought to surface, which eliminates the potential for acid rock drainage, which we hear a lot about. Reuse of water within our facility will be a non-discharge facility, and we've announced that we will adopt the dry stack tailings methodology, which means we won't have a tailings basin, a dam, or any potential for dam failure. In addition to this, 50% of our tailings will be returned back underground. Overall, we'll produce 20,000 tons per day, and we have a 25-year mine life. We're on track through our studies to be a net zero operation. We've announced a battery electric fleet, which minimizes emissions and enhances worker safety underground. We'll source renewable energy providers, we'll recover heat from our mine ventilation, and we're advancing research on carbon sequestration, both passive and active sequestration in our tailings. Domestic sourcing of these critical minerals, as has been mentioned, addresses pressing public policy issues. One, the climate crisis. Domestically source these minerals needed for the green energy. These strategic metals can also bolster our nation's national security. We can shore up this domestic supply chains, becoming less reliant on other nations, all while creating American jobs. Recent actions by the administration are really an attack on our way of life. The administration took action specifically by canceling our leases and mineral rights. There's a proposed federal mineral withdrawal in the Rainy River watershed. All of these actions stall and circumvent the established process that Mr. Cherry just talked about. It has the potential to shut the door on investment in our area and copper nickel mining in this region. This is all brought to us by the influence of well-funded opposition groups that are out there making claims based on scare tactics and emotional pleas. All of us have to work together to ensure we are grounded in science and facts, and that we understand and can be assured of a fair regulatory process. Finally, we at Twin Metals were steadfast in our commitment to advancing our model underground mine, dedicated to bringing much-needed economic growth in our region, committed to the communities in northeast Minnesota, and will responsibly develop a domestic source of minerals critical to our nation's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Jessica?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. All right, thank you all for having me. Again, my name is Jess Johnson. I do the community outreach for Talon Metals. We are a mineral exploration company focused on the Tamarack Nickel Project, which is located in Aiken, Minnesota. That's about 2 hours south of here. And I just wanted to take some time just to give an overview of our project. So the Tamarack Project is actually one of few high-grade nickel deposits that you can find worldwide. Other than the Eagle Mine in Michigan, Tamarack is the only development stage high-grade nickel project in the United States. So our team at Talon is really focused on pushing this project forward so that we can provide a domestic source of nickel for the U.S. EV battery supply chain. And as many of you may have heard in last month's announcement, we were actually able to move one step further in reaching this goal by establishing an agreement with Tesla to supply and purchase nickel from Tamarack. So this is a really exciting opportunity for our team, and we're really looking forward to partnering with Tesla and building that relationship as we move forward with the project. Exploration in Tamarack has been ongoing since 2002. We are still in the exploration stage, but since we've been working in Tamarack, our mineral lease payments have provided so far over $8 million to the state as well as the local counties, cities, townships, and schools. In addition to this, we have spent over $9 million on local goods and services in the area. And just for reference, the city of Tamarack has a population of 94 people. And within that 30-mile radius, there's only 2 towns that have a population over 1,000. So very significant benefit. Outside of that boundary, we've also provided $31 million, or spent $31 million within the state of Minnesota. The project has also conducted 15 years worth of environmental baseline data so far, and we're continuing to expand on those studies really for the purpose of shaping a mine plan that can be focused on safety for both the environment and the community that many of us live in that work for Talon Metals. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on some of the research that our team is currently doing on carbon capture and storage opportunities. So right now, our team has done some initial studies looking at the Tamarack deposit as having the potential to permanently and safely store potentially millions of tons of carbon through carbon mineralization. So that's a natural process of
sequestration potential, etc. Better processes for safety, better conversations with our communities. And to me, maybe I'll speak just a little bit to that because it might just be a bit of a tangent from where the conversation sometimes goes. At Tech, we're a company that has a 120-year history. We produce copper, zinc, metallurgical coal, as well as oil. And it's a passion within our company to be part of the communities in which we operate, because we know that we can't do it without them. And the conversation that we're having more and more these days is stewardship of natural resources, just like the conversation you're having here. To me, this is a good thing. To our company, this is a good thing. Through our sort of history, we've recognized that there's different ways to do that. And maybe just take you on a bit of a journey here. But growing the importance of that conversation to us is something that we've invested a great deal of time in the last 10 years. And it's to beyond where the metals and minerals are found to how they improve our lives. So as an example, Zinc Saves Kids was an initiative led by Tech in 2009 with the International Zinc Association, focused on improving the survival, growth, and development of undernourished children globally that had micronutrient deficiencies that helped save literally hundreds of thousands of children's lives. That's a narrative that we've invested time in to try to expand the conversation. So it's not just a conversation between us, but it becomes a conversation more significant to the communities we work in. In 2019, and maybe our timing was good, but we recognized the need to bring to the forefront the antimicrobial properties of copper. As a major and growing copper producer, Tech committed itself to raising awareness for the use of copper as an innovative solution to healthcare-acquired infections. The Copper and Health program has two very simple goals: to improve health outcomes for people globally, and to raise awareness about the important role that mining and metals plays in our everyday lives. Through that initiative, we've helped install copper surfaces and copper-infused strips in high-touch areas in hospitals, healthcare facilities, transit systems, bus systems, offices, infrastructure, etc., that kill 99.9% of bacteria and viruses and reduce their transmission, including COVID-19. Timing sometimes is a bit fortunate, but nonetheless. At Tech, we invest our energy and resources to discover, acquire, and develop what we call multi-generational resources. And it's very important to emphasize the word multi-generational, because we see our children and our children's children working in the same industry that we do, because we love it. At the same time, we know we need to leave positive change in the communities in which we operate. We invest in learning about how to do things better, much like our colleagues here around the table, and we take responsibility for our actions. We're committed, persistent, and patient in growing our business, both globally and locally. We also recognize this is not always easy. The Mesaba copper nickel deposit was discovered in 1955. It hasn't moved since 1955 as far as I'm aware. I think it's still in the same physical location. We first became sort of owners of the asset in the late 1990s, and we've invested diligently to try to figure the best way to move that project forward. Timing is again, a bit of a challenge, but all I would say is, as I've heard from the other folks, you need commitment, you need patience, you need to be persistent, and you also need a bit of optimism. What I've seen today is no lack of optimism and no lack of persistence and patience and maybe a little grit. So more than happy to lend our hand there and look forward to working more closely with you in the future.
Thank you, Colin. Harry.
My name is Harry Noyes, President of Compton Minerals. Really appreciate this opportunity to be here today and Western Caucus coming to northern Minnesota on a fairly typical winter day. Be brave enough to do this.
Harry, can you bring that microphone just a little bit closer?
Okay. Is that any better?
A little closer. There you go.
Okay. I'm president of Compton Minerals. Compton is a private company conducting exploration in Minnesota. One of the key issues I'm going to have in the background here during my presentation today is just talking about the BLM and U.S. Forest Service plan to remove large parts of the Superior National Forest for mineral exploration. This is a highly frustrating development for us as a company, and I think for other potential investors in the area as well. The Duluth complex was mineralization was first discovered in about 1948. Subsequent to that, extensive additional exploration occurred, demonstrating it really is one of the world's largest repositories of copper, nickel, and other mineralization. With this recognition, there was decades of work done by exploration companies as well as the state in attempting to develop a regulatory system that would preserve the environment and protect the environment and allow development of the resource as well. Additionally, in 2012, the Superior National Forest, in conjunction with BLM, published an environmental impact statement indicating that exploration essentially had almost no impact on the Superior National Forest. It indicated there's some problems with respect to noise, but that's readily mitigated by some grouping areas around drill rigs. Now, more specifically with respect to encampment, it was formed by two entrepreneurs who, in year 2000, to specifically explore the opportunities in the Duluth complex. Encampment's founders have decades of experience in mineral exploration and development, as well as other innovative technology. They have a long history of environmental stewardship as well. Since year 2000, we've spent tens of millions of dollars in the Duluth complex on a mix of state land, federal land, and private land. We found new deposits, expanded known mineralization, and generated new exploration models as well. There's clearly a lot more to be done in the Duluth complex in adding resources. The checkerboard pattern of land ownership in the Superior National Forest and the Duluth complex means that mineralization often crosses property boundaries. Thus, withdrawal of the Forest Service lands may well have direct and indirect impacts on development of state and private lands as well. Encampment has worked diligently with Forest Service and BLM to meet and go beyond regulatory requirements to minimize impacts. We have a very successful track record on this. Yet in October of this year, BLM announced plans to close significant parts of the Superior National Forest for up to 20 years of study. Soon after that, they called us and indicated they were canceling 11 prospecting permits we had, on which we spent millions of dollars. In summary, we do not believe a land withdrawal is needed. An adequate regulatory system is already in place. Closure of the Superior National Forest as lands as proposed by BLM and Forest Service could delay or foreclose opportunities for jobs and other spin-off industries beyond mining in the Duluth complex. This is at a time when such development could well support the transition to a new renewable energy economy. Cameron appreciates your interest in coming here, and we look forward to providing you any further information. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Palace, and to my colleagues in Congress. You can see the opportunities as I tell you every week in the halls of Congress, the opportunities for in iron ore mining, and now the opportunities in critical minerals and the investments. They're talking about millions invested, millions of dollars here and there. Those are the economic drivers that we're pushing forward to, as John Cherry talked about, $550 million. Just one company. Colleagues, look at the companies here. We're on the cusp of something. And this is why I'm passionate about it. This is the opportunity we have. And we live, work, play, and recreate here. We care about our environment. And we're doing it the right way. As we get into questions, I just want to remind my colleagues, 3 minutes. The timer there will be that computer there. And if I may, I will start out on panel 1 with the first questions. And then when we go to panel 2, I'll ask the questions last. And I think we'll go to myself, Mr. Newhouse, Mr. Westerman, Mr. Carl, and then Mr. Tiffany and Fishbach, and over and over to them. We'll go that way. So my question is, you got the timer going? Again, thanks all for joining us. And this is for Mr. Cherry. You know, the Polywet project is on the doorstep of breaking ground, but years of litigation has slowed the process down. What recommendations would you make for litigation reform?
That's a great question. Can you hear me? So, great question. We've had some sidebar chats about this in the past, but if miners measure things in geologic time, we shouldn't have to measure the permitting litigation in geologic time as well. It just seems to me that's what it is. A lot of these big environmental groups have more attorneys on staff than some small law firms do. And in order to keep revenue coming through the door, they need to have an issue. They need to have challenges. That's how they make their revenue, to employ these people and do things. And I think they've actually weaponized the legal system to essentially try to stop these projects by death of 1,000 cuts. Now, it's only fair that everyone has a right to challenge, but there needs to be some side rails to this so that it never ends. And a couple of ideas that we've come up with are things that we've thought about. Just as an example, a couple of weeks ago, there were 2 more federal lawsuits that were filed against our project on the land exchange that we had done. We received that permit almost 5 years ago. And the statute of limitations to file a lawsuit on that is 6 years. And whereas there's bills that have been passed in Congress for transportation projects, like rail projects, those things, where the statute of limitations or the period in which they have to file a lawsuit is 60 days. So again, what the mining companies need is certainty of process, and it needs to be a reasonable time frame. The project should be able to stand on their own merits. We have to prove it with the science and engineering and absolutely do it right. But there needs to be an end to the process on that. So changing the statute of limitations to something more reasonable, like other big transportation bills have, to 60 days. Maybe forcing people that want to challenge these projects to post a bond against our losses. Again, in our case, we've spent tens of millions of dollars fighting the litigation on this. At the end of the day, we've prevailed in almost everything. And it seems unfair that we have to spend that much money to prove that we were right at the end of the day, and it just stalls and defers our project. Another potential idea is loser pays. I know that stuff, but in tort reform, that may cause people to think a little bit more clearly and challenge those things that actually do need to be challenged instead of maybe frivolous challenges. Those are just a couple of ideas. I'd be happy to talk with you some more about that in the future.
Thank you, John. I have about 30 seconds left. Chrissy, as far as the Director of Environmental, the process at Mintac, what are the biggest issues facing U.S. Steel's mining operations today in the regulatory space?
I think it's really similar. It's regulatory certainty, so knowing what rules you're shooting for and what end targets you're looking for, and timing to get there. So if you need to have those targets so that you can engineer for them and then receive those permits in a timely manner.
Certainty and timing are important. Great. My time is up. Chair Newhouse.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you all for your statements. That doesn't seem to work. Does it? Is that better? Okay. It was working last time. I'll just speak up. Can you hear me? Thank you all for your presentations. Very interesting. Lots of challenges here. I wanted to focus on the lease canceling at the Twin Metals project, if I could. Dean, if you could, we want to do what we can to hold the administration accountable here. From day one of this administration, they've done things like cancel the Keystone XL pipeline, put a moratorium on leases of federal lands for oil and gas exploration, many other things, and then just, I think in the last week or so, canceled leases that were reinstituted during the Trump administration. And as far as I can tell, all you're guilty of is following the process. Could you expound a little bit on how we can help get this administration accountable here?
So I appreciate the question. It is a blow to Twin Metals to have our leases canceled. Obviously, they're a big portion of our mine plan. The challenge that it really poses is the fact that that certainty, there's a process to get to a perfected lease status, and that takes time, and it takes money, and it takes valuable known resource to be there. And so to have them just canceled underneath you as you're working through the process by a stroke of a pen is difficult for us as an organization as a whole. And really, you know, there's negotiations around those reinstatement of those leases, so it's a kind of a two-way street at that point in time, and then just to have them canceled by the stroke of a pen is challenging for us. So more certainty in the process, knowing that your leases are secured. Once you have those secured, you've done the work to prove that is really important going forward.
So we'll continue to monitor and engage with that. I share your frustration. Hopefully we can find a way through this. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And then our ranking member of the full committee, Natural Resources, Bruce Russman, and there's a timer, Bruce.
Do I get Dan's time he didn't use?
No, yes, you can. Yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Arkansas.
You know, us slow-talking Southerners are disadvantaged on these time limits. Plus, we're up here in unnaturally cold weather. Our heart rate is slowed and the blood flow to our brain is low. So I appreciate the generosity. I want to thank all the...
You just used your minute.
Reclaim my time. Thank all the panelists. Wonderful testimony that you've given, but thank you to everyone that's here that cares about what's going on. You're so passionate about these issues. You know, I don't know, I'm looking for a nickname for Pete. I don't know whether to call him Pete Ironman Stauber or Platinum Pete Stauber. We may have to have a vote on that. But he definitely is a tremendous voice for northern Minnesota, for your livelihoods in Congress. And we're all passionate about it because we realize that Pete's on the side of truth, and he's on the side of America, and he's on the side of you wonderful people here that he represents. You know, there was talk about uncertainty. Just to give you a brief example of what we have to deal with. In the Build Back Better plan that came before our committee, you probably didn't see this, but there was actually a provision in there to pool a lease on a mine in Arizona that Dean wasn't 1,400 feet below grade, it was 7,000 feet below grade. I had a chance to tour that mine. $2 billion had been spent developing it. This bill was going to pool that lease and close the mine down and spend $350 million taxpayer dollars. That's the mentality that we face. The thing that we're missing in critical minerals is critical thinking. You're not missing it here, but as a nation, we're missing it. There's so much exciting stuff about the innovation you all talked about. I've only got a little bit of time, but Chrissy, you said something today. You talked about U.S. Steel permitting a multi-billion-dollar electric arc furnace in Arkansas to do recycling. And you talked about the permitting process that took 6 months. I want to give you the time to talk about imagining what if all permitting processes were like that, if the government realized they work for the people instead of the other way around, how much better life would be.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the project, if people saw it or not, is in Osceola, Arkansas, and it's a mini mill that we broke ground on this week. Really exciting. We submitted permit applications in September, and big permits, PSD operating permits. It was not an insignificant deal, EPA review, but the state got those permits out in a very expedient manner. Not an easy permit. It has all the requirements on there. I think it's 600 or 700 pages long, so it's definitely not. But if you watch any of the press events, look on YouTube, it's a fantastic economic development for that area, which is fairly depressed. Fantastic jobs in addition to the jobs that are already there by Big River Steel, and opens up a lot of opportunities to that state now for maybe automotive to come in and some other things, because they're open for business, and it's very exciting to the citizens of Arkansas, and be fantastic for our citizens to have that same opportunity.
Yeah, 6 months on permitting. I mean, that is really a fantastic goal for us to look at. Jared Carl from Alabama.
I came here to interpret what Bruce says, so if y'all need some interpretation, I'm your man. You know, y'all got a piece of heaven up here, you truly do. And traveling around today, I saw Alabama. You know, I saw the small towns, I saw the energy of the people. You know, this is America. Not downtown Los Angeles, not downtown New York. This is America. This is what built this country. So let's be proud of who we are and where we're from. You know, there's some wonderful people that have come from Alabama. There's some wonderful people that have come from this community. So let's stand tall and stand proud for a change. And to my union friends in here, please remember us in 2022. I've defended the union numerous times in my short time in Congress. I'm telling you, it is a war in Washington on the union, and I don't understand that. But with that said, I'm sorry. I wanted you to understand where my heart's at. You've got a beautiful place here, so let's enjoy it. And the stuff I've seen today has just been incredible. People say, what's Alabama got to do with what we have here? Well, we've got this little thing called NASA up in Huntsville. We build all the rockets in Alabama. We've got this thing in Gadsden, Alabama called the Stryker Force, the vehicle Stryker. We need those precious metals. We need those minerals from here. We've got this thing over in Tuscaloosa called Mercedes. Oh, did I mention we've got the largest spine in one material needed in a battery? So now we've got this battery triangle, we're calling it, between Auburn University's engineering, Alabama's Tuscaloosa, and NASA. So we've got all the elements to build these electric cars, electric vehicles. So guess what? We have 5 companies building electric vehicles in Alabama. We have 1 building buses, and we have 1 that builds trucks. That didn't happen by accident. That did not happen by accident. So my question to you, Jessica, I know you talked about Tesla and them talking to you about precious metals. Do you see an avenue to reach out to these other companies like Tesla? Because it's unlimited. Most people are only viewing Tesla as being, they may be the leader, but there are a ton of followers. And we need your minerals in Alabama. So tell me, is there hope? Are we looking at more of a market here for what you're dealing with?
Yes, I would definitely say yes. So really our agreement with Tesla is just for a portion of the current resource that we're exploring in Tamarack. Something I should mention is the current resource we're drilling in Tamarack is about 1% of the entire Tamarack intrusive complex. So our company is planning to continue to explore that entire intrusion and hopefully have additional resources. And really with our goal being to provide nickel for domestic U.S. EV production, that means the entire U.S. So if we can help build that domestic supply chain, yes, there would be opportunities for other battery car manufacturers across other states as well.
Thank you. Roll Tide.
Tom Tiffany from Wisconsin. Mike.
Here we go. Hey, don't start that clock yet. So I come from another cold, God-forsaken place known as Wisconsin. And hey, I just want to rattle off a couple questions, get through pretty quickly. John, is it correct that over at the Eagle Mine, that mine is built under a river?
That's correct. It's built underneath the San Trout River.
Yeah, so think about it. We can build a mine safely underneath a river. And that has been operating safely for nearly a decade now, hasn't it, John?
That's correct.
Yeah, exactly. Dean, it seems to me they broke a contract with you, that the federal government broke a contract with you. Is that accurate?
I would say yes, we did have a contract with the federal government for our leases.
Yeah, so think about that. You go back to Keystone XL, January 20th, 2021. We broke a contract with a company from Canada. And what does it say when our federal government, your federal government, is breaking contracts with companies, and you wonder why our foreign policy is in tatters.
Time for change.
Ms. Johnson, you just heard these stories. Why in the world would you guys invest this money to try to accomplish this?
I mean, we want to be a part of the EV transition, and I mean, we're following these companies, but again, I think to follow what John was saying, we very much want to see the regulatory agencies let the process work and do it in a timely manner, like Chrissy and John pointed out.
Well, I want to thank you for your optimism as you go forward, because we truly do need that. I'm hoping at some point that we'll get to a breakthrough. You know, I've been saying consistently to people for years that certainly said it in regards to energy production, but it certainly applies to these critical minerals that we have. This is job security, this is economic security, and this is national security. Think about all the jobs that the panelists have been talking about. Everybody's been talking about all the jobs that can be created from doing these things with natural resources and produce it right here in America. You think about economic security. This is how you build a building like this. What a beautiful facility here in northern Minnesota. I come from over in Monaco, Wisconsin. We'd love to have something like this, and the mining industry has built it. So you have that economic security that comes with this also, and it is national security. When you look at why is Vladimir Putin on the doorstep of the Ukraine? Because we were weak. And when we are producing things here in America, when we make it in America, we're strong. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Tiffany. Representative Fishbach.
Yes, well, thank you very much. And I just want to thank all of you for being here today, and for all of the hosts we had for the tours. It was just wonderful. And you know, I'm just from just west of here, and I was in the Minnesota Senate for many years, but never got invited up to the mines. So you should, you know, tell your legislators that I was never. There you go. But have really learned a lot today, and was familiar with it. And I just want to tell you, you know, it has really been my honor to serve with Stauber and to all of these with all of these members. And that's one thing I will say. People ask me what was the most surprising thing when I got to DC, and I said, you know, it was really surprising. There are good people there that are fighting for our beliefs and our well-being. So that, and these are some of those examples. And I won't ask any questions. I just want to tell you that I share your frustration. I share the frustration you have on the overregulation and the politicizing of those permits. Because it's just wrong that we have these kinds of resources in the United States, in Minnesota, and we are being really prevented from using those, and we are going to become dependent on other countries. And so I will continue to fight for what we can do, fight with Congressman Stauber to make sure that we can get those, use those resources to our advantage and provide jobs and strong rural communities that we are looking for. And so I will just say thank you so much. I will continue to do what I can, and I wanted to, and please always feel free to contact me. You know, if you just drive west, you hit my district, so you'll find me somewhere over there. But I do appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Congressman Noble from the great state of California. And before you begin, it's really neat that the Congressman brought his wife with him on the tour. His wife Heather is with us, and Heather, it's great to have you here because we can't do it without support of family members. Thank you for your attendance. Jay.
Well, thank you, Pete. And thanks for bringing us out here. I have really enjoyed getting to know your constituents today. And I have to tell you, we meet a lot of representatives. There are a few representatives that are as passionate about representing their community as Pete is, so you're very lucky to have him. I have a question for Mr. Cherry. I'll ask you just because your experience with this is so recent. We had a hearing in the Natural Resources Committee on the resolution copper mine a few months ago. And one of the things that came out in that hearing that just floored me was the statistic that if we want to build more electric vehicles, and if our goal is just to replace the next model year production with electric vehicles instead of internal combustion vehicles. Not the whole fleet, just 1 year production. That will require quadrupling worldwide copper production. The most stringent environmental regulations in the world right here in the United States. If we cut off federal lands for mineral exploitation, we will force that copper production into places that produce the copper in a much less environmentally friendly fashion. So here's the question, and it might sound rhetorical, but I'm really interested because I think you might have the answer. How these environmental groups that have been suing you to stop your permits and to stop the mine from operating, how do you argue with the logic of, if you want electric cars, you need more copper. If you want more copper, the most environmentally conscious way of producing it is here in the United States where we have strong regulations. What part of that do they not agree with? And how can we better evangelize to them?
It's a great question. We think about this all the time. So I actually used to run the Resolution Copper project about 10 years ago, and very familiar with all that. It's unfortunate, kind of what's been going on down there with reviews of EISs and all those kind of things. With these environmental groups, they find themselves in a dilemma right now. Right? They want a clean environment, they want all the renewables, they want the electric vehicles, but they don't want to mine the metals here. And when you ask them, have you ever met or seen a mine, or tell me a mine that you support, they can't point to one. So a lot of times I wonder if they're interested in a safe mine or if they're interested in no mine. But what we have to do as an industry is we have to meet the standards, and everyone here has spoken to that today. And we've proven that we can do that. Some of the environmental groups just recently have indicated that we shouldn't mine the metals here in Minnesota, but we should rely on other countries like Australia and China and these other places. And Pete already spoke to this. These are strategic metals and minerals. What happens if someone doesn't want to be our friend and ship those metals over here? Maybe I'll leave one statistic with you here, and it's one of my favorite statistics. The World Bank gave a statistic here not too long ago in a paper where they indicated that over the last 5,000 years of human history, 500 million tons of copper have been mined worldwide. We need to mine that equivalent amount of copper in the next 25 years to meet that demand that you're talking about. It's got to come from somewhere.
Right. I completely agree. And I think we need to maybe shift the tone of our discussion with these groups and use words where we speak their language. Because when we talk about creating jobs, when we talk about sustaining our quality of life in our communities, when we talk even about strategic minerals and national security, I don't think they hear us. But when we start talking about the fact that not doing that production here in the United States will actually increase worldwide emissions and decrease environmental quality, I think maybe that's the way that we reach them.
I would agree. We make the metals that they need for their objectives. They can't achieve that without us.
Well, thank you, Pete.
Thank you very much. And the last question, I'm going to Colin and Harry, same question for each of you within a minute. Can you share more about your project's next steps?
The Saba project is in what we would call sort of scoping and pre-feasibility stage of engineering and design. And we've already done baseline, both environmental as well as social studies to inform that. And our plans right now, as a matter of fact, we're just finishing up a drill program for hydrogeologic studies, et cetera. And we'll continue to advance that engineering through 2022. And then our thoughts, we would be moving towards sort of pre-feasibility level and that next level of permitting, probably in 2023 or beyond.
Harry, next steps.
We have two projects that are on state and private land. One is a relatively large copper nickel project. It still needs additional exploration to fine-tune the resource and conduct metallurgical work, so that will continue apace. The other is a titanium vanadium project, which has a resource. We've begun doing some metallurgical work on that. We also have at least one resource on a mix of federal and state land, and we won't be doing any work on that until we resolve our prospecting permit dilemma with BLM and the Forest Service.
Great, thank you very much. And my good colleague Dan Newhouse says, Pete, I still have 45 seconds left. I never officially yielded my time to Westerman, so there you go, Mr. Chair, 45 seconds.
Thank you, Pete. Just real quickly, it reminded me, sitting in this beautiful facility and then touring some of the communities here, reminded me of an experience that I had, a couple of them. But the most moving one After the moratorium on oil and gas exploration by this administration, we had a Zoom call, a podcast with a lot of officials in the western states. One of them from the state of Utah was in charge of schools for the state. And he literally broke down on that call because as he was relating the impacts to school kids and the lack of their ability to be funding some of the critical things for their communities. And so I just wanted to give any of you that would like to an opportunity to talk about some of the contributions you and your companies have been able to make to some of the communities around here and the significance that we talk about a lot of the different benefits of the resource industry, but one of the most significant is the benefit to the communities. And I think this administration loses sight of that, and I'd like to be able to talk about that.
Chrissy Parker, what Tech has done.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I have kids in the school system, public school system, and we talk a lot about the Minnesota School Trust, and that's revenue that goes to the state and pays for public education in the state of Minnesota on a per pupil basis. And you look at the millions and millions of dollars that every year go to K through 12 schools. It's pretty incredible, and it's all out there. You can find it online. And when you talk about the school trust, 90% of that school trust is MnTech. On the flip side, KeyTech mines a lot of university trust ore, so that money goes in to pay for professors in the University of Minnesota system. So that's just day by day kind of doing business when we mine that ore. On top of that, we've really done a lot and really ramped it up in the recent years. The one that I'm most proud of, you would think would be this arena, but because I do have 2 hockey players. But I also, like I said, have 3 kids in school, and the Rock Ridge is a new school district. It's Evelyn and Virginia combined, and are building a new high school. And we donated $300,000 to the school district. So the gym will be named after us, but really just to help offset. It's tough to build a new school during a global pandemic and control pricing. So lots of other little ones, but that one I'm particularly proud of. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, and an enormous benefit to the entire community. So that's going to wrap up panel 1. We're going to take like a quick 5-minute break. Panel 2 will get in their places, and we'll start. So 5-minute break, get right to the questions. And what I'd like to do is we'll keep it at 3 minutes. And this has to, we just want to be casual like the first panel. And again, thank you. Okay, they're going to give opening statements. So right now?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. That's why you have to have good staff, trust me. So we are going to, before the questions, we're going to allow our panelists who support our industry and what we say our way of life up here to introduce themselves and give an opening statement. And Mr. Secretary, we'll start with you and just go right down the line.
You bet. Well, first off, can you hear me? I'm deaf. I'm partially deaf, and I never know. It's not on, right? No. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Like the AT&T commercial, right? Well, first off, thank you for inviting me to testify today and speak with you. I really want to commend the members for taking time out of their busy schedules to come together and see each other's issues. Because from my perspective, you will find an incredible overlap of the challenges you heard here to a whole host of issues that take place on federal lands. And I think that's worthwhile. The first panel was far more eloquent than I would be, speaking about the permitting challenges. And I thought they did a great job. And I want to say to the members of the audience who are here, I commend you for coming to this meeting and conveying to these members the importance of these issues. When I was asked to come here, I was really excited about it because this is my second time to tour the Duluth area. And the last time I came here was June of 2018. And I went to a roundtable with President Trump and participated in that. And it was one of the highlights of my experience serving in administrations, and I've served 16 years, 11 months and 20 days in administrations. And what was electric about that event was that the president was speaking, and you could feel the energy of the folks in the room that recognized he was fighting for them, the forgotten men and women of America. And that is why I joined the Trump administration from the outset. I believe fundamentally that the policies he had promoted a better situation for the United States of America, and I was attracted to it. And that moment encapsulated that for me, and it was very moving. As I left the administration, I committed to devote a significant amount of my personal time to working on the policies that we promoted in that administration. And the first panel described a 17-year process, and then added to it that the government doesn't always play fair. And my view of that is beyond accurate. The opposition does want your death by 1,000 cuts. They do. They don't want mining here. They don't want mining anywhere. That is what they want, and they're well funded. Now, I happen to believe fundamentally that our country is filled with people with actual common sense. And I do not believe for a minute a country can have a sustainable policy for mineral development after spending the last 2 years experiencing the challenges of COVID that says we have as a policy a desire to be more dependent on foreign resources. That policy will not sell, even if it is the policy of the administration. And right now, the administration wants to make permitting and regulatory processes more burdensome, not less, more burdensome. Every action they're taking is intended to create less certainty and take more time. That is the bottom line, and that is what you face. And I will stop there.
Mark?
Well, thank you, Congressman. I'm not sure how I follow that, but actually, I can't wait to tell my dad that the former Secretary of the Interior was my opening act. You laugh, but that's exactly how he'll tell it. But, we wanted us to bring a little more of a national perspective to this, and I think it's important to realize that the system for hard rock mining here in Minnesota is different than in most of the western U.S., where we have the claim location system. It is unusual to have a leasing system that we do have here, and that is part of the problem. Because hard rock mineral deposits are unique geologic phenomena. They're rare, they're very difficult to find. And as we know, mines can only be located in those few places where economically viable deposits were formed and discovered. And unfortunately, already more than half of federal lands are off limits or severely restricted to mining. Further restricting access to mineral resources, or even the threat of restricting access, has a chilling effect on investment. If we're not investing in mineral exploration, we're not discovering that needle in a haystack deposit that can be developed into a mine. Relying on adversaries, and even in some cases our allies, for the minerals that we need has created our dangerous dependence on foreign countries. Americans and the environment lose when we offshore our mineral requirements. It makes absolutely no sense to create mining jobs elsewhere and import minerals from countries with lower environmental and safety standards. Fortunately, this is not an either-or proposition. We can be pro-mining and pro-environment. President Biden emphasizes that the clean energy transition and addressing climate change will create jobs. Well, if we really want to create well-paying family wage jobs and strengthen our domestic supply chains, then look no further than the mining industry. By keeping our existing mines operating and getting new mines in operation, the economic impact ripples out far and wide. Truly, few industries pack such an economic punch. The challenge that our domestic minerals industry faces is acknowledging our mineral supply chain issues runs counter to actions actually being taken by the Biden administration to restrict access. You know, the federal government's decision to cancel the longstanding leases here in Minnesota really demonstrates a stunning lack of understanding of our supply chain realities. It's also a glaring example, as I mentioned earlier, of why our leasing system doesn't work for hard rock minerals, and why the claim location system and the security of tenure provided by the mining law is so important to attracting investment in the U.S. And companies will invest in mineral development where they can obtain access to the land and access to regulatory approvals. It's pretty much as simple as that. And they need to know that when they invest millions, if not billions of dollars, that the federal government won't pull the rug out from under them without even allowing the rigorous permitting process that we have to go forward. So if the U.S. is going to compete in the global mineral environment, we need to focus on increasing domestic mineral production, not creating barriers. Because we need more mining here, not less. Thanks.
Thank you. Ryan?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Mining is one of the most heavily regulated industries in the United States, and NMA's mission is to build support for public policies that will help fully and responsibly utilize domestic sourced minerals. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, northern Minnesota, and specifically the Duluth Complex, contains world-class deposits of minerals essential for renewable energy, vehicle electrification, communication, manufacturing, infrastructure, and new technologies. And in fact, the largest undeveloped deposits of nickel, copper, and platinum metals in the world. So each mine in this area is significant. The USGS also reports, however, that we're 50% import reliant on nickel, 79% reliant on platinum, 76% reliant on cobalt, and even nearly 40% reliant on copper. Less than half of the mineral needs in U.S. manufactured, less than half of the mineral needs of U.S. manufacturers are met from domestically sourced mining resources. And federal lands are the source for much of our nation's estimated over $6 trillion of mineral deposits. While mining isn't appropriate on all federal lands, responsible access to domestic resources and secure mineral supply chains are essential for every facet of our lives. So when some mineral supplying competing countries do not value environmental protections and labor standards the way that we do, projects like the ones featured today really just prove that the U.S. must prioritize domestic production and that it can be done with our existing world-class environmental protection and labor standards. And I appreciate the opportunity to join you here tonight.
Thank you very much. And so for the questions, we're going to go just the opposite way from Congressman Noberolti and then back down my way. And I will be the last one, so we'll skip me and go to you, Bruce. So, Jay.
Well, thank you, Pete. I have a question for Secretary Bernhardt. So, obviously the administration's mineral withdrawals are causing a lot of problems here in Minnesota. But in California, the state that I represent, we're having problems not with mineral withdrawals, but with the withdrawal of new energy and gas exploration permits on federal lands. A similar issue with this administration. So, unfortunately, it seems like what we have is not an environmental problem. What we have is a political problem. How do we make common cause with each other to try to make the case to not just the administration, but the people behind the administration, the environmental groups that are catalyzing this effort. How do we evangelize to them that being good stewards of the environment does not mean walling off the environment, and that we can be good stewards and be ecologically conscious at the same time that we exploit some of our natural resources? I'm fascinated by what you might have to say about this because of your experience.
Well, first off, I'm an optimist, a complete optimist. And so what I'm going to say may sound pessimistic, but it's not. I've spent a lot of time working on natural resource issues, and I do not believe that the activists on the other side want to hear an idea that would change their mind. I do not believe that. I do not believe it's a messaging issue. I believe it's an issue as to the control of the land and how it should be situated. And the reality is that it's my experience that they take comfort from the fact that they have stopped an action from happening. And so my view is you don't change their mind. You must change the minds and educate the minds of the broader American people.
Great, I completely agree. Thank you.
Michelle.
And again, I appreciate the information. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I did tell Congressman Stauber I would ask so that the gentleman from out of Minnesota, not outstate, out of Minnesota, could ask questions. So I yield back.
Tom.
So I get 6 minutes speed, is that right?
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, you didn't say that?
I didn't say that.
Okay. So David Bernhardt, before we get into the mining stuff, there was news that broke this afternoon that the wolves will once again be listed as a result of a federal court action. Briefly, what do you foresee happening on that front?
Well, first off, let me say that the wolf is unequivocally recovered and healthy. Yeah. And they're thriving, right?
Absolutely.
And that is a conservation success. The other thing you should know is that the scientists within the Fish and Wildlife Service feel exactly the same way. And that's important to recognize. The court today held that the rulemaking that the Fish and Wildlife Service did, that I believe I signed, was arbitrary and capricious. While I disagree with the court, I think it highlights a very significant issue. And this is a question for older listings that are before 1973 and for charismatic megafauna, polar bears, grizzly bears, and wolves. Can a court ultimately get to the conclusion that any rulemaking is legally valid? And for the Rocky Mountain wolf, just so you know, the Rocky Mountain wolf is delisted because eventually, after multiple efforts by the Fish and Wildlife Service, Congress stepped in and solved the puzzle.
Sounds like a challenge for Congress. Mr. Compton, I commented earlier in regards to, I thought this was breaking a contract. Do you view this, when they remove these leases, that it's in effect breaking a contract?
I do, Congressman. I absolutely believe that. We actually, as AEMA, we completed an analysis that some of our member attorneys completed just this last year on the takings implications of Mr. Grijalva's mining law bill and the conversion of the claim location system into leases. So that analysis on those Fifth Amendment takings implications was specific to mining claims, not leases. But I think that same type of analysis certainly has some potential here where the federal government could be liable for significant, or could have a significant takings liability here.
I'd just like to close with this. Mr. Bernhardt, I want to talk to you afterwards. There's a case that has Chevron deference implications at the federal Supreme Court level right now. I'd really like to explore that further, but I'm just going to close by this. I hope all of you out there do not quit. Do not give up. Because as Mr. Bernhardt said, he's an optimist. I am also, and there's some days when it's hard to be optimistic. Please do not quit, because I can guarantee you, all of us up here, we will not quit.
Yeah. Thank you, Pete. Let me just say real quickly, Secretary Bernhardt, it was a breath of fresh air to have you in office, and I wish every day that we had you back. So, compliments to you on your work. I'm sure I don't have to remind the folks here, but Mark, you and I co-authored an op-ed after the recent COP26 meeting over in Scotland, remember? And then all of you read it, I'm sure you did, so I won't go over it. But the theme of that was we can dig our own future, right? Kind of a play on words from the UN Secretary General who said, with mining and oil drilling, we're digging our own graves, which, not in the United States we're not. That's a bright spot in our economy. It may be true other places, but could you talk about how we can lead the world and show them how to do this?
Yes, absolutely, and it was an honor to co-write that op-ed with you. It's not every day a member of Congress called you up and asked you to do that, so that was pretty cool. And he was saying we're going to be digging our own graves by mining and drilling, when in actuality, mining is the answer to our climate problem. Mining is the solution to the problem. And, because the clean energy transition, it's going to take a lot more mining, like I said, not less. But the demand for those minerals is going to quadruple or potentially go up sixfold, depending on how quickly you want to get to a global net zero. But we have the highest, as has been mentioned, the highest environmental standards in the world, the highest labor standards in the world. We do lead the way, and we have a responsibility to lead the way, and we have the ability to be the master of our own domain, so to speak, and responsibly utilize our own resources, and we need to be doing that.
Thank you. So, David, not to let you off the hook, and this is not a political question. I think it's something that is a fair question. You, coming from the Department of Interior, led the agency admirably. In your humble opinion, what do you think? We've talked a lot about some of the decisions that this administration has made. What do you think is the worst one that they've made so far? As it relates to this world of interior.
So, I fundamentally believe elections have consequences and transitions have consequences. So you will not think this is a significant issue, but I do. Beyond policy changes at Interior, we made a number of process changes. And those process changes meant, for example, that on average a BLM environmental impact statement would go from taking 4 years on average to 1.2 years. We had things like the environmental documentation on the cover needed to say the cost of the environmental documentation. And you would say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, as somebody who's been in a courtroom, when your document's challenged, and you say, you're right, Your Honor, but it costs $17 million, do you really want us to do it again? They might pause and think about it. And every little process reform like that was yanked out. Why? Because they don't want a rapid process for any permitting. They don't want transparency. They don't want timelines. They don't want accountability. Because the folks on the other side of these issues have unlimited time. Unlimited time. Project proponents do not have unlimited time. And the government employees typically also have unlimited time. So for me, that says everything about where the administration wants to go.
Thank you.
Bruce?
Thank you again to another excellent group of panelists. I think something that a lot of people don't realize is in the House chamber, inscribed in the marble right above the speaker, is a quote that says, "Let us develop the resources of our land, call forth its powers, build up its institutions, promote all its great interests, and see whether we also in our day and generation may not perform something worthy to be remembered." I think our founders were pretty smart. They understood what it took to build a great country. That quote was from Daniel Webster. And Secretary Bernhardt, I can't say thank you enough for the work that you did, the example you set in how we are good stewards and build up we develop our resources and we build up our country. And we're preaching to the choir here. We understand what needs to be done. But I want to look at kind of a national security, foreign policy perspective in U.S. mining. If you carry this far enough, if we were to develop our resources the way we know how to develop them here, we're going to find that there's countries in other parts of the world who are developing resources that aren't playing with the same rules we are. Not the same labor rules, not the same environmental rules, not the same safety standards. The list of 32 critical minerals and the countries who produce most of them. China produces dominates in 18 of the 32 critical minerals. The U.S. is ahead in 2 areas, and that's beryllium and helium are the 2 out of 32 critical minerals where we lead the world in production. America has been blessed beyond measure with resources. We have all the resources. We have every critical mineral on this list that we could be producing. But we've seen, even with uranium, Russia and Kazakhstan is our main supplier of uranium because our private businesses are competing with foreign governments that will cheat and do anything they can to gain market share. So if we can develop these resources like we know we can, it's going to sometime come down to trade policy. And foreign countries take advantage of our free market system and they cheat in it. How do we develop foreign policy that utilizes American resources, assuming we can develop them?
Well, I have seen this play out actually in the energy space. And let me tell you a brief example. I worked in the Trump administration, and I worked in the Bush administration, and there were decisions that the president made on energy policy because of the reliance the United States had on foreign sources of energy. Fast forward to the Trump administration. President Trump was freed because of our energy independence to make decisions in the Middle East and in Asia that were facilitated by his ability to be utilizing our LNG exports, utilizing our independence, and the difference between the 2 presidencies in those areas was quite significant because of some of the choices they made. There's no question that the same flexibility would flow to a president on the critical minerals side. There's no question. The only real question should be, why are we headed in the wrong direction on energy and minerals? Jerry.
Are you through?
Go Hogs.
All right. Mr. Mr. Secretary, I apologize today. When we met in that snowstorm in front of that hockey stick, I didn't recognize you, and I didn't recognize your name because I was in too big a hurry to get back on the bus. To be honest with you. And I appreciate an eagle like you coming and hanging out with a bunch of buzzards like this. Thank you for honestly taking time and coming down and doing this. But, you know, Mr. Jackson, you touched on something. I wrote a question down here. I want to run by you. Thank you for the entire panel for being here. But you mentioned mineral suppliers like China. You know, they don't have environmental protection policies in place like we do. And they certainly don't have labor standards like we do with our unions here. So can you expand more on China and what China is doing? For example, their steel and how they can produce it so cheap?
I'd be happy to. It's a number of, the National Mining Association works with a number of different institutions, metallurgical schools across the country.
A little louder, Ryan, a little louder.
Work with a number of different metallurgical schools across the country. One of the most striking things that we've witnessed is that over the last 25 years, not only in terms of mineral production in the United States, but in terms of mineral processing as well, the difference, and we're talking about minerals like and metals like copper, aluminum, zinc. The processing has taken a complete 180. The amount of production that the U.S. did 25 years ago and the amount of production the Chinese do now has taken a complete 180. The amount of processing of those minerals. We ship a tremendous amount of what we do produce to regions like China to do the processing of it. In the course of that, they gain the benefit of the additional, it gets sent back to the United States and used for different things, but they gain the benefit of developing the critical minerals, developing the rare earth, the waste processing for that we need to have here in the United States. So there's a disadvantage on many different fronts that really allows Congress to take a look at that and develop a number of different steps that we would love to work with you all on, and we appreciate the receptivity to work with us on those things.
Real quickly, do you have any idea what the average worker in this industry makes in China versus America?
Oh gosh, I don't know what the pay difference is, but the average wage in the United States is about $50,000. The average wage for a miner is $80,000. There's no competition with that in China, to be sure.
And then I've got some final comments. First off, thanks to the panelists for being here, and thanks for your strong support for the industry, not only here but throughout the nation, and of course in the nation's capital, helping us put good legislation together. So, Secretary Bernhardt, last question. To close today, could you please compare the personnel and policies between agencies from your past administration to the current administration with regards to mining?
So I worked for 3 different secretaries of the Interior and served as secretary, and certainly was involved in transitions from the Clinton administration and from the Obama administration. And the biggest difference, I would say, between the current administration and all of those administrations is the number and the level of appointees that have been inserted in these administrations that have long and lengthy career histories in the most activist of organizations. And the fundamental question will be, over time, can they carry out their oath of office in a way that's not blinded by that history. And we'll see that play out, and different people can have a different view on that. But it is extraordinary, the number of activists that are now working in these regulatory agencies. It's extraordinary. Policy-wise, my view is the President Biden was transparent, largely, in my opinion, about his energy policy, with one big exception. I believed that he would want to lessen the development of energy and minerals on federal lands. I appreciated that. I did not foresee that he would want to expand the development of fossil fuels and minerals in other countries to deal with that. I could not have come up with that as a grounded policy. So those are the two biggest surprises for me.
Thank you for the very comprehensive answer. I've got two things before we wrap it up. First off, I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to let you know that the United States Hockey Hall of Fame is normally closed on Thursdays, but when we asked their staff if they would open it up to show my colleagues American pastime, the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, they did that. So I want to give the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame a shout out. They treated us well. And then the last thing, I want to read a text message from you. I can't make the mining caucus today, but I'm there in spirit. Remind people that everything comes from the ground. If it isn't first mined, logged, farmed, or drilled, it probably doesn't exist. If we want our new age economy to be a reality, mining has to be a huge part of it. We have all the minerals necessary to make batteries, windmills, solar panels, electric cars right here in northern Minnesota on the Iron Range. We have been mining for 140 years. We have the cleanest water and air in the state. We know how to mine and keep the environment pristine. We helped win 2 world wars, and we're going to continue to mine these minerals, including precious metals. Senator David Thomas-Honig. So with that, we're gonna close. I want to again thank my colleagues who heard passionate statements from our panelists and our community members in their discussions prior to the start. Thank you all for coming here, and I want you to have a safe evening. And the future is bright for mining here in Minnesota. God bless you all.